Galloway's Support Through Sight Loss. Galloway's Get Active presents The Big Blind Walk with Julian Jackson.
Okay, so joining us today, we've got Julian Jackson from Vision Bridge. Now, a couple of years ago, I think it was, Julian, you did the Big Blind Walk to raise awareness for research into sight loss and sight conditions. Mm-hmm. We joined you on a stretch along the canal roundabout.
That's right. Happy memories.
Bath and Grange. So, nice. Welcome, Julian. So,
thank you very much. Thank you, James. How long would you like me to talk for?
We usually finish round about 3, but we can go on. It's entirely up to you how long you want to go for.
Midnight.
That's fine.
So, and like I say, if we did talk a little bit about the Big Blind Walk, and then maybe a few questions. If that's
sure,
okay.
Sure. Yeah, well, so, maybe I can start by just telling you a bit about my social enterprise Vision Bridge. And first of all, thank you so much, James, for coordinating this. I feel a bit like an interloper. You guys all seem to know each other so well, but I'm I'm certainly up for a Christmas hamper. I'll stick my hand up for that one. Yeah, but thank you, and I have very happy memories of bumping into a lot of you along the canal there. And I'm sorry that we had to just get on and keep going to get to Lancaster. It was that day that
a few of us followed you for a bit. We was a few that followed you.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Well, I was just so grateful for your support. Oh, it was beautiful. It was just beautiful, and I love walking along some of those towpaths. But I mean, this all. I mean, gosh, it's well over 2.5 years ago now, and I have very vivid memories of it still. And the reasons essentially for doing that walk are still very relevant today. I mean, just in terms of eye research, I felt then and I feel now that we need to do a lot more to highlight all the amazing work that these researchers are doing upstream of clinics and hospitals, to improve our understanding of eye disease and to improve treatments and to think about obviously restoring sight for those people who have lost it or who have never had it. So that was one of the big drivers for me was to try to connect in people's minds what goes on in laboratories and what comes out in the eye clinic. And I'm delighted to say that the press, the media attention was just amazing right from the beginning when I started in Cornwall on the 29th of April until I finished on the 22nd of June up in John of Groats. I had radio stations through every county. I had national newspapers. I was very lucky to have the Countess of Wessex come and walk with me for a bit in Gloucestershire, which gave me a lot of media attention. And just thinking about I'd love to talk to some of you in more detail at some point about your own walking and running and cycling or whatever you do, because looking back on my walk, what did it take me? It took me 49 days of solid walking, and I had 6 days of resting and stretching, and just trying to take it easy that I had throughout those on top of the 49 days. So in fact, I felt so fit 3 weeks before the end of it that I didn't think I needed any days off after that. But it was 1,089 miles I walked, just over 2.5 million steps. And I was walking an average of 22 miles a day. Some of the days were about 27 miles. Some were 16, 17, 18 miles. As you can appreciate, the terrain was very, very different in so many different parts of Great Britain, so that it sometimes took me 10 hours or even 12 hours to do 20 or 22 miles, especially, up these huge hills in Cumbria, and also places up in Scotland and wherever. I mean, the physical toll on me was quite interesting. I did 6 months of very intense training before I set off in Cornwall. So I was doing a lot of road walking and a lot of inside walking on a walking machine. I was trying to keep fit, cycling as well inside, and doing a lot of yoga and what have you. So I felt quite fit, but what I didn't really plan for was losing 5 toenails, losing 5 kilos in weight. I got a terrible leg infection, which lasted for 3 weeks, which nearly scuppered my whole walk because my joints in my knees started swelling and the infection started getting into my hips. And I was eating antibiotics for about 5 weeks. And the soles of my feet actually just fell off my feet. I was actually walking on bandages for about a month. And they were just raw meat, really. But it's amazing how the human body can, replenish itself. And by the end of the walk, my feet were almost back to normal. They just got used to this pounding. They definitely changed shape. That was another weird thing. They actually flattened out. My feet actually got wider.
Oh,
just an amazing thing. But all in all, the body gets used to this kind of physical effort, and you just get fitter as you go along. I was obviously drinking gallons of water during the day. I was eating constantly. I was burning around 6,000 calories a day. We walked as fast as we could along roads, and obviously had to climb up some pretty steep hills. One of the most physically demanding days was walking around. I don't know if any of you have been around the southern side of Loch Lomond, but it took me 10 hours to climb boulders and slide down quite steep inclines and basically climb around. I had 2 white sticks with me and a guide, and I had to give sometimes my white sticks to the guide and just literally walk on my stomach, as it were, to get round to get round all these obstacles. But so I think the physical side was quite tough. The mental challenge in terms of trying to maintain focus every day was also was pretty demanding. But we had a routine which we very much stuck to in terms of when I had to get my head down and get some sleep, when I was going to do the yoga and keep myself sort of supple every day. I had to do the yoga before I got myself up and out. And, we had to plan very much the logistics of it. My wife was driving the camper van every day and ahead of me and setting up camp. So we stayed in 54 campsites, and most of them amazingly refused to take any money, which was a lovely thing. But in terms of just going back to the reasons why I did this walk, one, of course, is, as I mentioned, about trying to promote our research and raise money. We raised 65,000 quid net of costs. So I was very happy with that. And we shoved that in the National Eye Research Centre. But also I got this idea for the Big Blind Walk, funnily enough, when I was on a tandem cycling from John O'Groats to Land's End back in 2010. And I kept, when I was cycling through Scotland, I kept smelling pine trees. And we were whizzing past all sorts of interesting bits of architecture, historical monuments and what have you. And I said to my tandem buddy at the time, you know what, this is so frustrating. I want to get off this bike and actually just get a feel for what we're cycling through. We did the journey in 8 days. We were cycling around 120 miles a day. That was an amazing experience. But what I was missing was the ability to really suck. And you guys will appreciate this because of what you do. You've got to be able to stop and listen to things. You've got to be able to touch things, suck up the environment, just get a feel for the neighborhood. And I just wasn't doing that on a bike. So I wanted to go back to the simplicity of just walking and being able to take, I mean, within reason, to take my time, just getting to experience some of these local areas. And in fact, when we were walking through Cornwall, I think it was on day 2 or 3, this mate of mine said, Julian, I'm just going to jump over this hedge. I've spotted a monument and I want to know what it is. And I said, sure, we would have missed that had we been on a bike. And he came back and said, this is a monument to the last king of Cornwall in 11, whatever it was, or in 10th century, I think it was. And that kind of thing, you know, it's just nice to be able to know that it's there. So it was very much about stripping right back to just walking under your own steam. It was about also this compulsion which I had and still have, which I'm sure you'll also appreciate, which is that I had to get outside. When I went blind in 2010, I have a retinal inherited disease, retinitis pigmentosa, which some of you may have. So the lights went out for me completely in 2010, and I had this compulsion to go and just go and stand outside all the time. I didn't want to be stuck in the house, and I felt that one of the best ways of sort of breathing in the air and getting light into my eyes and the sun on my face was to actually walk from one end of the country to another. There is a farmer in Wiltshire, grass farmer, who talked about some years ago, he talked about the enchantment of place. And that to me really sums up that there are lots of enchantments of place around the UK or around Great Britain. And I was lucky enough to walk through so many different areas of woodland and farmland and marshland and hills and obviously experience the roads as well. It was a weird contrast walking along, for example, the West Highland Way, which some of you may have done, but it feels quite high up and very, very, I mean, some of the silences up there, I used to just stand for 5 minutes and just hear absolutely nothing, not a plane, not a sheep, not a tractor, not a human being, not a bird. And then you contrast that with the traffic thundering past you on the A9, you know, in Scotland. That was a weird thing. But because I can't see anything, I also had this need to touch trees. I became a bit of a tree hugger, and I found some incredible very, very old, massive oak trees in Shropshire, strangely enough. I mean, one was probably 45 feet in diameter. It was 300 plus years old. And I just love that kind of thing. That tree has been around many, many years before I've been on this planet, and it will be, I hope, for many hundreds of years after I've been on this planet. And you just get a feeling that there's a certain strength and longevity about some of these things. I mean, the dry stone walls, that I love touching all these dry stone walls up in Cumbria. I love feeling the pine needles on on the floor of in the woods all around the UK. I loved smelling the wild garlic. I mean, I couldn't believe the amount of wild garlic. You guys will appreciate this walking through the woods where you are. You know, some of these wildflowers I didn't even know existed, which my guides would describe to me. The red and pink campion, the hawthorn in bloom, the wild orchids, the white bluebells, all sorts of things like that. And some of the architecture in the villages and the vistas, you know, walking through. Well, I mean, in every single county that I walked through, there was something absolutely amazing for them to describe to me. And I know it sounds such a cliche, but I just felt I could see through my feet, having walked every single step from one end to the other. And I have to pay tribute really to my guides, because they were not only guiding me, they were actually having to vocalize everything around me, because I needed the context. You'll appreciate this. It's nice to have a context where you're walking. Otherwise, you might as well just be on a walking machine, right? So that was nice to have description all the time of what they could see and how far they could see. And they also obviously had to read the maps. So, you know, they had a lot going on, and the connectivity was an interesting thing. Again, I was using human guides. I don't have a guide dog, so I had one. I mean, some of you would have experienced this, but maybe. But I was using one stick in one hand. The other stick was being held by my guide. I needed to have some sort of physical connection, but even then I felt that I was fairly independent. It's like being on the back of a tandem. You know, when I'm doing 50 miles an hour down a hill, it's amazingly exhilarating. It's dangerous. It's exciting. It's very infusing, and I felt you know, quite independent, even though I was stuck, you know, on the back of a tandem. So the same thing really for the walk, and the connectivity was there as well with social media, with the tracker that I had in my backpack. So I knew that people could watch me on the website walking, and I had my twin brother, who's also blind, would ring me every day and say, "Why the hell are you only walking at 2 miles an hour? You know, come on, pick it up." And that's because I'm climbing a hill, you know, whatever. So I felt connected, even though you know, we were out there in the middle of nowhere somewhere. And also, what was just fantastic was the recognition that I had throughout England and Scotland, and that was very much down to the radio programs and the TV, the newspapers. One memorable occasion, I climbed up something called Green Up Ridge, which took most of the day. I don't know. Do any of you know Greenup Ridge? It's a bloody high hill anyway in Cumbria, and we stood at the top of this thing, and my guide said, "Oh my God, Julian, I can see Scotland from here." And I said, "Wow, that's fantastic." And we stood there just kind of drinking in the atmosphere, thinking, you know, God, that we've really achieved something today. And I heard this voice behind me say, "Here, you're that guy off the telly, ain't you?" And he'd seen me on Country File, and that happened a lot. In fact, that you know, people would. One of the takeaways for me of this walk was just the amazing generosity of spirit and the kindness that people had. You know, I remember. I think it was the third day of the walk. This little old lady in a car came tootling along towards us, and we kind of jumped out of the way. She screeched to a halt, and she wound her window down and said, "In about a mile, you're going to come to a garage. I bought you 2 pasties, and they're sitting there waiting for you." And she'd passed us on the other side of the road and had gone straight into this garage and then come back to tell us. So she bought us 2 pasties to keep us going, you know. And I just thought, isn't that just fantastic? In Stroud, this homeless lady came up to me and she shoved a bag into my arms. And I said, what's this? And she said, "Well, hang on a minute." And she pulled out 4 cans of lager and said, I'm going to have these. And then she stuck her hand in the bag again and picked out a 50p piece and said, "You can have that." That was lovely. And there's a little place called Tyndrum up in Scotland, and I was walking out of Tyndrum, and one of my guides spotted these 2 old blokes sitting in a river, and they were sitting opposite each other in a river, about 2 meters apart, chatting away. And I said to my guide, what are they doing? You know, because she said to me, "Oh God, there are 2 old blokes there in a river." And so we went and had a chat with them, and I said, what are you doing? And he said, "Well, you'll never guess, but we're panning for gold." And they only do this. They're 2 old geezers who've known each other for years and years. And he said, here you are. And he put into my hand a little gold nugget that he had actually panned for hours that morning. And he gave it to me, which I've still got. But, you know, there were people up in somewhere up near the end. I think it was maybe 3 days out from the end of the walk, and there were about five ladies on horseback having a canter down the road, and they stopped to chat to me, and then off they cantered, and 5 minutes later they came galloping back again and said, "Well, we've had a bit of a Google and we've read your website, and now we know what you're up to. We've done a bit of we passed the hat round, as it were, and here's 30 quid. So, you know, they did that. And there were just numerous examples of where people have run across the road to put cash in my hand. People who'd driven for miles to find my campsite because they'd heard me on the local radio or whatever it was. So that was just one of those things which I was just blown away by, was just how accommodating and how generous and how interested people were in my walk. And I suppose one of the things I also wanted to mention really was that another driver for me was that, and this is absolutely accepting, you know, Galloway's, because I think Galloway's is an amazing testament to the way that, you know, visually impaired blind people can be supported, and those with other sensory challenges. And I think you're amazing what you do. But my experience of quite a lot of charities in this country is that they're quite timid in the way that they go out and fundraise or do whatever they're supposed to do. I think a lot of them run around in small circles and they like their comfort zone. They're not they're very risk averse, and I feel that they need to do other things that are really going to challenge them, that are going to make people sit up and think, wow, now that really is impressive. We ought to maybe give money to that charity or this charity. And I just felt that somebody had to say something about, the challenges of sight loss, the amazing work that's going on in eye research, and also, by the way, to encourage people who are sighted to actually get out of their cars, get off their bicycles, get out of their houses, wherever they live, and actually enjoy the great outdoors. This idea of sensing nature, I think, is one of the wonders of the world, and it's free. And I think people ought to be able to just slow down a little bit, and maybe this COVID crisis has given people time to think a little bit more about, the qualities in life, or the things that can give you quality of life. And I'm very lucky to be living in Wiltshire near a river. So my wife can describe the kingfishers flying up and down the river. I can go down to it every morning and hear water rails, moorhens and coots when they're all, in season. I can obviously hear the swans, the geese, the ducks. I can take a walk with my wife up in the hills in the farmland here and hear the skylarks and the buzzards and so many different birds. And that was one of my other takeaways from the Big Blind Walk, was just the incredible variety of, which you'll all appreciate, but the amazing variety of bird song, especially the oyster catchers, the curlews, as I headed further north, the lapwings, even the golden plovers actually up in Cumbria. I mean, there were just so many different varieties. And to walk through farmland and have my guide describe the oyster catchers dive bombing the sheep to try and keep them away from their nests was just amazing. So I mean, I have an urge to do another walk. I'm planning. So if you guys can come across and meet me, maybe this would be an interesting one. But I'm planning to start from Lydd in Kent in the spring of 2022, and walk up the east side of England and then into Scotland, and end up not in John of Groats, but somewhere up the east coast of Scotland, up beyond Aberdeen. Because I'm fascinated by, Viking trails in Norfolk, pilgrim trails in Kent. There's just, as we know, that there are different areas which can offer so many different experiences, and I think I'd like to be able to encourage unsighted, less sighted, and sighted people to just stop and listen to their surroundings, enjoy just the simplicity of walking, essentially. And if they want to do that for a good cause, then fair enough. So that was really my Big Blind Walk. I mean, it's still sitting there on a website. I still get inquiries about it. The logistics were absolutely extraordinary and complex, and I pay tribute to my wife and daughter and to all the guides who were there at at the right places at the right time. And one thing, in fact, that really changed for them was that they all said that they were, since the walk, they have been looking at things in a different way. And that was because they were having to describe things to me in much more detail than they would otherwise have done. You know, they look at trees in a different way. They look at architecture. They look at vistas. They even, you know, study people much more closely than they had done, because I think people who can see just take it for granted, and they miss so much. So that was a big takeaway for them. Some of them, in fact, I had 18 guides over that period, and so many of them have actually taken up long distance walking as a result, which is a lovely thing. Some are doing coastal walks, or had done before COVID, you know, coastal walks down in Cornwall and Devon. Some had been doing things in Wales, you know. So I love the fact that this has inspired people who otherwise just wouldn't have done it. There's a wonderful book which you may have come across called "Walking with the Spring," and that was also something that inspired me to do this walk, written by a couple who I think had walked 500 miles and up into the Cotswolds. But what they did was every mile they walked, they planted an acorn, and they GPSed the acorn, and a year later they went back to see which ones had grown, and they did this over, you know, a few miles. But it was a remarkable thing that they had tiny little oak trees that were beginning to grow, and I thought that was a lovely title as well, because you definitely, when I was walking from the 29th of April through May and into June, you could definitely feel, because I believe the spring travels across this country at 3 miles an hour from the end of, isn't that amazing? From the end of April, as it were. So things change much later on up in Scotland and hang around, you know, up there much later on, obviously. And I think also for me, the wildlife, it wasn't just the birds. I mean, I came across seals as well, up in some of the lochs. I mean, one of my guides actually described a sea eagle that came down and grabbed a salmon from one of the lochs we were walking alongside. And the salmon was so big that this eagle had to pull the salmon sideways onto a sort of sandbank or gravel bank to get more of a purchase on it before it could fly off again. And that kind of thing, you know, you just don't come across very often. But I mean, I loved the canal that I walked along and met you on. A, because it was straight, and B, because it was quite flat.
Yeah,
and
you,
so that
you
was
definitely weren't doing 2 miles an hour on that stretch. I know
no. So that was quite a nice thing to be able to do. And the description of Lancaster 2 miles out from Lancaster that you could see from the canal was a lovely thing. And something, again, I just think people don't appreciate the value of and the history of some of the sites that there are. And, you know, planners need to just be careful when they start thinking about shoving more houses on our green land, that it doesn't block out some of these amazing things that have been seen for hundreds of years and sometimes thousands of years. I'm lucky enough to be only 4.5 miles from Stonehenge. And when I walk up there with my family, I know I'm walking along trails that are thousands and thousands of years old. And I know that when I come up along a certain ridge, and my God, there is Stonehenge in front of you, that has been seen and experienced and appreciated by others going back thousands of years. And I think that's just something we should be really careful about, and we should nurture and just make sure everybody appreciates that and holds on to those sorts of things. So I don't know if anybody else amongst the group today has done a really long distance walk like that. Maybe you've done lots of
there's a
walks.
There's a couple of us in the room at the moment, myself and Peter. A couple of years ago, we did the Yorkshire Three Peaks.
Wow.
About 15 hours, I think it was it, Pete?
15 and a quarter.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. You must have been... Did you train for that?
We did do some training walks for it, yeah. I think at the end, if I remember right, at the end of that walk, Peter told me he was going to throw his boots away and not do any more walking. But I think it was a weekend or a couple of weeks later, he was back on the walks with us. So yeah, I think it was a big achievement for us all, was that one. Yeah,
well done you. Well, I mean, it took me about, 3 months to want to walk anywhere properly again. I don't know how you felt about it, but I just got fed up with walking. Went back to cycling.
Yeah, I can appreciate what you said about your feet sort of flattening out and whatever. Because I think it's about 8 years ago now, myself and some other people, we did Hadrian's Wall, and again we were doing probably averaging 20 miles a day on that. We were staying over at camping barns and things. But what I found with that was when you got towards the end, you got to the point where you got your feet comfortable in your boots. Your feet have molded to the shape of your boot, and you were okay sort of getting going. And once you were walking, you were all right. But if you stopped for 10, 15 minutes or so, it's like your feet tended to swell up, and then it was like really painful getting walking again. Once you were walking, and your feet had molded back into your boots. It was
That's right.
Blood flow going. Yeah.
I had one of my guides was insisting on sitting down. He was with me for 5 days, but the first day we set off up in I think he picked where were we? Just picked me up outside Gretna Green. That's right. And he insisted on sitting down to have a sandwich at midday. And I said, I really wouldn't do that because you're going to have a problem. He said, no, don't worry. And he actually couldn't get up. He couldn't get up. Yeah. And he's a big bloke, he's a big bloke. And I said, look, you're going to have to, take it easy, but you've got to get up and start walking again.
We had a couple of sighted guides with us that were sort of guiding us around the walk, if you will. Being honest, they were the weakest link. They were like
really
every half hour, 40 minutes or so, they were wanting to stop for a 5-10 minute rest, and it's like, no, let's just keep going.
Oh no,
so much. No. And I think if it hadn't been for the sighted guides, the majority of us on that walk could have done it a day earlier easily. So it was like the sighted people were there, it was great that they were there to help out, but at the end of fitness wise and mental strength wise, they were the weakest of the bunch, if you will.
Yes.
Without him though.
And Peter?
They certainly couldn't have done it without him though.
No, definitely not. So, but
how do you feel about walking in a group of 10 or 15 or whatever, as opposed to a group of 2 or 3? How does that feel? Presumably very different?
For me, yes, because when I walk in a group, I'm the walk leader, so I've recorded all the walks, so I have the responsibility of all those guys that come with me. I know I do have a support worker that comes on the walks to act as my extra pair of eyes, if you will.
Yes.
But when we're out in a group, it's very enjoyable because you've got all that banter going.
Yeah.
But it's also, for me, you've got that mental, I'm trying to think the right words. With it's like I said, the mental burden of making sure everybody's okay. Obviously with the groups of people that we take with all sorts of different site levels. So it's
responsibility.
Yeah, that's big responsibility. Yeah.
But I mean, if you want to ask some of the guys here, Brian, Peter, David, Kay's been on some of the walks with us as well. How do you guys feel about walking in a group?
I'm Brian, and I find it very stressful looking after James. Like you said before, when people encourage you to go for walks, me and my wife, we never used to walk anywhere until we started going on these walks with James. And now every morning we do 5 miles every morning now, even though we're in lockdown. But it's great. We go on walks with James all the time. We're great. It opens your eyes up to what you see and everything. Because I'm totally blind like you.
I think one of the good things with these Zoom meetings and having the guests like yourself and Tony and people like that is that it just shows that even if you have no sight or you've got little sight, if you've got the right help, support, and you've got that motivation behind you, there's sort of nothing you can't do, really.
That's right.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, the reason I ask you about the groups is because at the beginning of my walk, I had an awful lot of people that wanted to walk with me, and it got a bit silly, like the third, fourth, fifth, sixth day. I felt a bit like the Pied Piper of Hamelin, and it was fine. But again, I felt quite stressed because I felt responsible for them, and I just had to shake them off in the end, and just say, look, I need to get on, and we need to keep this quite small. I mean, please do walk, but I can't walk with you,
It's surprising as well when you do get a group, the bigger the group that there are, actually the longer it takes you to do a walk. All the walks,
it does, doesn't it? I remember when we had that one on lockdown. In between the lockdowns.
Yeah.
How quick it was.
So, I mean, it just shows that all the walks...
was on your hand, wasn't it, James?
It was, yeah. So all the walks that we do, I've been on them before. I've reckoned them with my support worker and everything. And we usually reckon how long it takes us when we go with the group. We're usually at least doubling the time, especially if you start getting styles and gaits and things like that. You put a couple of styles on a walk, and if you've got 15 people on a walk, it's amazing how much slower that becomes. But the positive sides is that everybody's there, encourages everyone else. You've got that banter going, and it's especially the walks that we do, they're like a social element to it as well as being outside. You're outside in the nature, you've got all that mental health well-being and all that lot going on, because you're getting your fresh air, you're getting your exercise, you're sort of seeing or immersing yourself in your experiences. But you're also catching up with people that you've made friends with and you perhaps don't see on a regular basis. That's a big part of the walks that we do.
Do the walks that does each walk have to be different, or are you happy to sometimes do the same walk but just at a different time of year? Because obviously there are different things that can be described to you because of the seasons, changing the colour of the trees or whatever it might be.
Some of the walks we have done at different times of the year. If we are going to do the same walk, we'll sort of do a variation of it, if you will. So we'll take some of it. Might take a slightly different path to get to a different route, and because where we're located, I think we're quite lucky in that we don't have to go that far out of Preston or Lancaster to be kind of in the middle of nowhere, really. And you get that. You get that isolation as well. You get that feeling that you're in the middle of nowhere, even though you might only be like 5 miles away from the nearest city. So we do try and and vary things. Since we've been into lockdown and we've not been able to do the walks, I think I mentioned to you when I spoke to you the other week, I've been out and done some video walks so that
that's right.
the guys that normally come on the walks, they can't come on the walk with us, but we can try and describe a walk to you. And we try and describe what we're seeing there, whether it's waterfalls, the colours of the trees, especially in autumn, the sounds of the birds, just different things like that. And hopefully it'll give people either who've been on the walks or those that have thought about but not actually taken the plunge, they'll see the videos and think, oh, you know what, I'd like to go there. And it gives people an idea saying, well, come on, let's go and do that walk that we done. So.
Do you think,
James, when all this is over, it'll act as a preview, won't it?
It will do, yeah, David.
Encouraging you people to go on walks, perhaps.
I think that's right. I mean, I'm interested to know also whether you, as a group, feel that this, because some of us already mentioned this, the amazing boost it can give to mental health, emotional well-being, that feeling of connectivity, the importance of mobility, and so on and so on. I'm just wondering if you feel that health professionals have got walking outside, that connectivity with nature, whether they've really got that on their agenda as something they could literally prescribe. You may be familiar. I don't know. I mean, like with GPs and optometrists, orthoptists, nurses. I mean, anybody who comes into contact with somebody with visual impairment, they ought to be able to say, look, if you can, take your support worker or do it yourself, to take your member of your family, whatever it is, but go for a walk. I don't know.
I totally agree with you on that. I don't know whether it is pushed as much as it should be, because there's quite a few studies out there that do show that it can help with your mental well-being. It can help with blood pressure, diabetes, all them sorts of things as well. So
I get the feeling that GPs are starting to sort of think more that way.
Yes, I think that's right. I mean,
but I think it's good if you've not got the vision. To a certain degree, all right, you might be losing out, for example, on the autumn colours and things like that. Yeah. But on the plus side, what I've noticed since my sight went, if I'm out on a walk with my wife or some friends, I'll be walking along, and if it's in spring, I'll be like, oh, did you hear that cuckoo? And people say, no, I've not heard that. So you just stop for a second or two, let everybody, and just concentrate on listening. And other people will start hearing, and there's loads of things. Like today we went to videoing a walk for the next video walk, and I said to my wife, oh, well, you've got the video camera, if you can, just try and just capture some of the sound. Don't bother with the image, just capture the sound, because there was some jays screeching in the trees in the distance, and just little things like that you tend to pick up on.
Just becoming aware of our senses, isn't it, and your surroundings.
That's right.
Definitely.
I mean, are you finding as a group that you are getting fitter, or you want to get fitter, or are you staying within, the remit of, 5 miles or something? I mean, are you pushing each other to do more?
We've done the 10 mile, didn't we?
Yeah, I think the average walk we do tends to be around about the 5 miles. Simply because of, I think it's logistics and times and groups as well. So, for example,
we've got different abilities, haven't we? There are some people who could do 8 or 9, but then you get people who could only manage 3.
We have, we've got groups where some people want to come on the walk.
Medical reasons.
And they might only be able to do 1 or 2 miles, like round a park or something. And then there's others that are in the group that want to go and do more higher level, more challenging or longer distance walks.
And with a group, you've got a whole range, haven't you?
It's trying to cater for the majority. So if we look at that 5 mile walk, it might push some people at the lower end, or I don't want to say lower or higher end, but it might push some of those that can't sort of manage the longer walks. But on the other scale, those that can manage a lot more difficult walk, it's just keeping them out walking. And it's a balance between sort of the time that I've got allocated to do the walking and things like that, and trying to cater for the vast majority of people, if you will.
That's right. And are you still recruiting new members to the walk, as it were, to your walking?
We are. Finding, this year's obviously been pretty much a write-off.
Oh yeah, sure.
Everything. So, I mean, normally we would have done about 3 walks a month in the different areas. Wow. Sort of all the way through the year. So we would have been in different places at different times. So like this year, we missed out walking through the woodlands when you've got you mentioned the wild garlic and the bluebell, things like that. We kind of missed out on that. We've missed out on the autumn colours as a group, but like I say, I have captured these on the video walk, so hopefully it's people to experience. But it's just a shame that with the video on, we probably need to get Mr. Musk on board here to come out with like smelly telly or something, so you can capture all them other things like the smells of the wildflowers and the countryside and stuff. So
yeah. I mean, I think I would recommend night walking as well. I mean, obviously you've got to do that in a safe way, but round here where I live, the owls come out obviously at night, and you can hear them all calling each other all around the valley that I live in. It's an amazing thing.
If you're lucky as well, you can sometimes hear the bats as well, depending on the frequency and things like that. But so you've got the bats. You'll hear the owls. You might hear the deer. You might hear foxes and all sorts of things like that. So
you have to get well away from traffic though for that. Well away from traffic.
Just by going in back garden, I hear bats and owls in back garden.
Do you? Oh, it's just fantastic, isn't it? Do any of you live in a major city, or are you all out in the countryside?
I'm in a town.
Yeah.
I'm in a seaside,
aren't we? You know.
Yeah, we're very around Lancashire, all of us. We're all in different places.
Yeah. But it's also nice to have when you don't have the light pollution. You can have somebody describe the stars and the planets. I mean, Mars apparently is looking amazing right now. During November, very red, and sometimes we have the space station coming over this way. So it's a pretty interesting thing. If you can walk through. And walking through villages which are dead quiet at night, and what you can smell is the wood smoke from the chimneys. You know, it's lovely. It's lovely.
It's also nice, sort of very early morning as well, going for the walk, especially in spring when you get the dawn chorus, and then sort of on your way home when you're walking past the houses, you start smelling the bacon and the fry-ups and the fresh bread and things like that as well on your way home. So
you've got the smell of.
I live down here in Devon by the coast, and you smell the salt air all the time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's
that's a lovely thing.
You go down to the sea at night, and it's different to the day.
Yeah.
That's very true. But look, I mean, all I could do is just thank you, James, so much for coordinating it, and I was just thrilled to be able to share a little bit of the Big Blind Walk again. I mean, it was 2.5 years ago, but it just seems very vivid still. And thank you so much for Galloway's all your support and your interest. It was just brilliant that you came out. I was very touched. that you did that.
It was a hot day that day as well, and
it was. I can remember that day. That's what makes me remember it, the hot weather. And when I was listening to your experiences, when you think of it, before the railways came along, that's how people got about, isn't it? So
yes,
you know, there's been a lot of people who've suffered feet and leg punishment like you've had when they've say walked from Preston to London for one reason or another.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, I was very lucky with that, with the weather. I mean, over 56 days that I was out, we had 2 afternoons of rain. That was it.
Wow.
Wow.
That is luck.
It was a bit lucky with that. So yeah, I'd like to thank you for coming along anyway, Julian, and sharing your experience with us.
Absolutely fascinating.
Thank you so much to everybody for listening and for joining in. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julian.
Thank you.
Great pleasure. Catch up in a couple of weeks then.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, take care then.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Bye.